This is episode 45 of the Marshall Street Podcast.
You're listening to the Marshall Street Podcast, the home of music industry know-how that will give you the skills to take your career to the next level. Here are your hosts, Bennett Ferguson and Stu Watts. What's up, everyone? This episode is called Open Up to Collaborate, and you are here with myself, Stu Watts, Bennett Ferguson. And so today we're going to touch on a few topics about collaborating and the mindset around collaborating. So a few things like brainstorming, being open to other people's ideas.
Incorporating those ideas and just being open to the idea that you may have come up with initially, that letting that be fluid and letting that kind of evolve into what it needs to be.
Exactly. But before we get into it, what's been happening around the traps at Marshall Street?
Around here, well, it's Easter long weekend, so we had a bit of a break from the studios. But aside from that, we've got Josh Trabuzio's film clip, which is coming together. He's finished recording his song.
I finished mixing it and mastering it, so that's all ready to go.
We did some
very
pre-production.
Soon.
We did some pre-production last week for a new Melbourne group, Bitch Eyes, which was fucking awesome.
Loved that. Had a great time.
And that's basically brings us up to speed. So let's jump into it.
Let us do that. So if you like what you hear, as always, make sure you share it around to all your friends and give us a follow and subscribe or whatever platform you listen to us on or watch us on. We would love that. That helps us grow and gets us out to as many people as possible. So, opening yourself up to collaborate. What is
important thing? So I was going to say it's one of the most important things when it comes to a creative industry, whether it's music, photography, videography, being able to, one, express and articulate your creative idea to another group, but then also being open to constructive criticism, to other ideas, to letting, the idea that we come up with on our own, letting that to evolve and blossom into a bigger idea.
Yeah, because, when you come up with something by yourself, you are limited to your own experiences, your own influences, and that is fine. You probably have heaps, and that's all good, but you never know what someone else can bring to the table, whether that's a different idea, whether it's, a piece of music, whether that's, visual art or anything like that might just click you into another, like, oh, I'm going to go this way now. And, you alone might not have thought of that, but, someone else that you are working with could just have the idea of the century and it just takes the two of you to work together.
And not only that, like when it comes to, whether it's music, we never know what the listener, what they're going through or what their mind state is. So sometimes we can come up with the best idea for a plan and the best, what we think is the best construction or the best, arrangement for a song. At the end of the day, that's just the best idea that we put together from our personal experiences and views. Bring that to someone else could change it. And, there's no right or wrong. So you never know what's going to resonate and what's going to translate with the listener.
That and you day to day. Hour to hour. You're feeling different things constantly. So what can be the greatest idea one day, the next day might be a pile of trash. But
especially if you're stressed, like, as you know, being in a stressed mind frame will release cortisol in your body. That's actually proven to drop your IQ nearly half in about 3 or 4 minutes. That's why if you've ever gone to a restaurant or anything and you've looked up at the menu and you know what you're going to choose or you know what you're going to order, and then the waiter comes up or you get to the front counter and you change it and you change it at the last minute, and you're like, why did I do that? That was cortisol in your body affecting your judgment. So,
absolutely.
Even if you didn't get a good night's sleep the night before, that could affect your ability to make good judgment calls. All of these things come into it. So when it comes to collaborating, being open to those other opinions, what other people bring to the table, even if nothing else, it's an extra set of eyes on to double check you're working out.
So let's talk about when you first start brainstorming an idea. You might have had the idea in the shower that morning, or, you might have been thinking about it all week and you're just coming to band practice that night or something like that. You first have this idea and you're like, oh, that's pretty great, whether that's, a new lyric, a riff, or, a concept for a video clip or something, entirely different that you didn't know you could have thought of, but you did. And you're like, oh, this is sick. I've got to tell my bandmates. I've got to tell, this concept to my videographer so that they know how they can pull it off. When you bring ideas to other people, What do you think is important to keep in mind?
One, and this is a big one, is that you may have come up with this idea organically, and sometimes when you're, it's funny you said in the shower, but it's funny those kind of meditative states when we're not doing anything is when your brain can sometimes piece together things that you've been thinking about for ages. So one is you've had this idea organically, and you may know the dots that you're connecting in it, but they don't. So one, you've got to be able to articulate your idea and where you drew that inspiration from and why these decisions came to you. Otherwise, you're trying to translate in a creative field something that's not tangible to someone else. So whenever things get lost in communication, there could be, there's a breakdown in communication.
So then, what do you think? Because I can think of some things straight off the top of my head is doing a mental brain map.
Yep. Writing it down. For me, as you've seen, how I like to work is if I've got a new idea for something or I know something needs reworking or it needs attention, my first thing to do is open up a document and literally just brain dump everything that's going on. Makes no cohesive sense. There's no sentences in there. It's literally getting all the dot points that my head is trying to think and trying to map together, putting them on a piece of paper, because then when you can visually see it, you're like, oh, this makes so much more sense. Here I was trying to piece this piece to this, but when you look at it, you're like, it almost maps it out 80% of the time for you.
It does, because when you're stuck in your head, there's conflicting thoughts. You can get distracted. You can forget things. There's all these little things that can get in the way of you having a really cohesive idea or thought or concept. Doing something like that, writing it out, drawing pictures, looking up the internet for visual stimulus, all those little things to form the core of the idea, so that when you take it to the other person, you're not just saying, I had this idea and it was it was kind of like this, it was kind of like that. No, I've got something that, listen to this, this makes perfect sense in my head. I want you to understand it too.
Yeah, 100%, because you could have a great idea, and creatives are funny that we have all these great ideas, but you could have the best idea for a film clip or for a song. If you can't translate that idea to the videographer, to the engineer, you're not going to get that idea, and you're not going to be able to express yourself creatively the way that you're imagining in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
And a great learning curve for me was going through with music videos. From the very first music video we did, where we had no idea.
Who was the person in charge in the DYE of coming up with the stuff and mapping it all out? Both of you? Did you kind of bounce off each other, or was it more one? Together. I know that, but was it more one person than the other that had these ideas? You're running around shooting the guns and stuff like that.
That one was Blair.
Right.
So
okay.
That was the videographer that we used, Blair Harris. He basically got these new effects and packs and everything.
Yep.
And he had done our film clips before, so he's like, "Hey guys, I want to use all this. Can we incorporate in a DYE clip?" And then so that's why I ran with that.
Because you generally kept it simple. You generally just did you guys walking around the city and doing the Beastie Boys thing.
Yeah.
Or
that was our whole idea, was keep it simple, and it's something you can execute. We never wanted to go down the narrative film clips.
Yeah.
We never, because we knew we kind of couldn't.
Yep.
But in that, going from our first video clip, where I think our game plan was, hey guys, let's just decorate a shed and film it in there, to where we're going through now when we have Chris and working through video treatments for Raya. It's a much more in-depth process where they take the idea in their head and you're putting it together. You're putting a video treatment together that's
It's really leaving no stone unturned. It's really I need to figure out absolutely everything, because we need to know that if something can't be done, that we know how to fall back on the other thing, or just being prepared for rocking up on the day and it raining, for example. You know what you got to do if that's going to be the case. You know, you're leaving no stone unturned, and that's just for a video clip. But it's the same thing for recording, for example.
100%.
If you're this is why we harp on so much about pre-production, because when you're prepared for a recording session, you just go in with that much more confidence. You're more likely to pull off what you had in your head, all of these things. But getting back to brainstorming, we've kind of talked about the one-sided aspect of it, where you come up with the concept.
Yep.
Next, I want us to discuss a little bit about how, if you were the person on the receiving end of an idea, what is important there? You know, how do you need to be receptive to someone else's ideas?
Yep. I think, well, one, for me, it's, again, kind of the inverse of coming up with the idea yourself. When someone, a team member, a band member, comes to you with an idea, initially, I think the first thought our mind has is how to pull it apart. Just kind of, that's just human psychology. We try to dissect it all.
Yep.
When I think the first step should be an understanding. All right, let me understand, one, where they're coming from and where they want to go. What's the purpose of this? You know, if it's someone coming to you with a new song, it's like, okay, cool. Where did you pull these parts from? What's the purpose of this song? Is this going to be more of a pop record that we think is accessible? Is this just for us to get musically weird for ourselves?
I think that's kind of cool because, you know, definitely in all of the bands that I've been in, there was only a few times where we really had a concept idea of the way that we wanted something to go, whether that was like, we want the song to sound like this band, or, you know, we want it to sound like this song, or we want it to be a pop radio friendly song or something like that. You don't often take the time, unless you're further down the line or you have always thought of things in a concept-based manner. Without that, you're kind of just going with it. And a really good thing that you said there is like, you know, if you approach it like, okay, maybe I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, everyone in the band stops and listens. And just sits there and listens to this one person's idea of something that they want to do without jumping straight in with, as soon as you first have that idea, okay, now I'm sidetracked because I know what I want to do.
Yes.
Just take the time, sit and listen.
Got to understand it first. It's kind of like, you know, shiny object syndrome for new ideas. And I used to see it all the time on work sites. Like when I was going from construction site to construction site, just when one job finished, you go to another. And the first thing new guys do, or a new apprentice does, is they'll be on a site and their second day in, they've got all these grand plans about how you can change it and why we're doing things this way. And then when they're there for a month, 2 months, they're like, oh, I get it. This is done that way because of all these other factors that I wasn't aware of. So it's kind of, yes, your brain may jump to how to dissect it and how you would do it if you're going to do it better. But I think being aware that, hey, this person who's come up with it has already thought of all those things and they've addressed them in a certain way. It may not be the way your brain jumped to address them, but they have thought of them in some capacity. So getting that full understanding of the idea is the first step.
And this is something that takes work. Like, you know, it doesn't happen straight away. You know, depending on the type of personality you are, can depend on, you know, can make a difference in how you react to certain situations, how you react to certain ideas, how much of a planner you are, how much of a creative you are, all of these different little things that make different people different can really change that relationship with each other in the band and stuff, and or in the team, or, you know, someone that you're going to work with that you've never met before, for example.
Absolutely. And even if you've had, sorry to jump in there, even if you've had success or haven't had success collaborating in the past, that can affect how you go into your next collaboration. You know, if you've had nothing but poor collaboration experiences and everyone you tried to work with just, you know, is really headstrong and you haven't got the result out of it. If you've had 2, 3, 4, 5 years of these examples, you don't have any tangible evidence of a successful collaboration to fall back on. So that's going to affect your mindset when going into your next collaboration. So sometimes having the awareness of, hey, I know collaborating is good, but for whatever reason, my previous ones haven't gone to plan. Let's leave them and let's try to find one that works.
And the same could be said for, you know, if you've been in a band for 3 years and there's one person in the band who wants to take control of everything and doesn't really let anyone do their thing, the same thing could be said. You might just think that that's the way that is, that one person needs to take control and it's not up to the full band to have a collaborative process, you know. And yeah, I mean, I potentially have been that person in the past, or, you know, whatever, but it takes practice is kind of what the way that I'm thinking about it, you know. Being in a workplace where you have to work alongside other people to make sure that you get these really positive outcomes. And this is something that we were talking about before the podcast started. Like, you know, the thinking that you're always got the best idea is fine. It's okay, but it's not necessarily that productive.
Yep.
You know, if you are someone that has really great creative ideas and, you know, you believe that you know what the end product looks like and know how to get there, if you're shut off to anyone else's opinion or, you know, way of going about certain things, you might be shutting yourself off to a better way
100%.
that you can do in the future.
Yep, absolutely. And especially that's being open. Like, yes, you may think that you have a great understanding of your idea because you came up with it. And yes, to an extent you've come up with it to the best that your brain could put together. But at the end of the day, we can only all draw off our own life experiences and things that we've been through to craft these ideas. So when it comes to bringing that to the team, what you're doing is bringing in other perspectives, other life experiences, other opinions, other creative voices to something that you wouldn't have. It's like the analogy of a tree. You know, your idea is just a single branch. When you come to a team and bring it to someone else, you're giving that single branch the ability to branch off and create something that it wouldn't have in just your self-isolated, you know, working space.
Yep. And, you know, the Dunning-Kruger effect comes to my mind with all that sort of stuff, especially if you have been the person in your early bands that, you know, if everyone else just sat back while you wrote the songs or something like that, and then you move into another band where, hey, someone else has got as much, if not more experience than you do, it can be really difficult for you to suck it up and be like, I need to sit back and listen to what this person's got to say.
Yep.
Because that Dunning-Kruger thing where you're like thinking that you're way up here when you're not, you're just down here, you know, you're just getting started. And it's you got to be humble. You've really got to trust other people and just if at the very least listen to them and just hear them out and see what they've got to say.
Yep.
It might not go the way that you think it does. It might go the way that you think it does. But at the end of the day, by not listening to those people that are in your team, you are really cutting yourself off from some potential gains, you know?
Yep, absolutely. And I think one of the things there, you said it might end up going the way you thought, it might not. But my big outlook on that is, even if it goes, if say you come to your band or your team or whoever it is, and you're going, hey guys, I've got this great idea, this is it, this is perfect, this is how it's going to go down, I've thought about it, I'm the one who writes everything, I know what's happening. And your bandmates come in and they give you a couple of ideas. In your head, you may be like, nope, I know my idea was right, I know that. My thoughts on it are, if you are open for those concepts to bring them in, hey, one, if it goes the way you think and it doesn't pan out the way everyone else does and you are like, oh, I told you I was right, that shows that your working out was right.
Yes.
Like there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a positive.
Yeah.
So just because something, you know, isn't good or you don't have the outcome you thought, what you've done is you've put actual data down to now learn from. You've actually proven it.
And you've also potentially, if that keeps happening the same way every single time, you will become the authority.
Because you've done it not by brainstorming an idea and telling everyone that you know how the future's going to pan out because you've got this magical brainstorming mind.
And forcing it to go the way that you...
To me. It's like, hey guys, look, well, we did it this way. You've now shown it time and time again. You've got real analytical data to prove it. So if all else, all it does is it should prove your theories. It should prove your ideas. And I think most of the time, most people would be happily surprised at how their ideas can blossom and evolve into something that they couldn't come up with on their own. You could get an idea 80% there. I'd say, like in baseball terms, you can get an idea to third base, but to get it at third base to home is like, bring it to the team. Where are my blind spots in this idea? What do you guys think about this? Because you've usually thought about something in a way that I didn't. I've got this so far, but to get this over the line, let's bring the team in.
That's really interesting, that baseball analogy, because if you've only hit it so that you can get to third base on the first hit, you absolutely are at the mercy of the batsman that's in that time. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but like you can't get to fourth without them hitting a good shot, or you know, if they get caught and the next person gets caught, you're out. You don't get the run. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Like that one?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yep,
it's a good one. So that's cool. So we've talked about, you know, the initial brainstorming process and great ways to go about forming these full ideas where you can bring it to the table and be like, I have a really good idea of kind of where I want this to go.
Yep.
And and then also being open to, other people's opinions and,
Yep.
ways about going with things, because you can learn so much from other people.
Yep.
And you can also get data, like you were saying, analytics based on the outcomes of those things that you have just done.
Yep.
Then what? Say you're still kind of in the concept area.
Now you've got
though.
to execute. Now you've got to commit to a plan, and then execute it. So committing to that may be the difficult part, especially if you're, someone who might like control over the full project. You've got to, one, either have some wiggle room and leeway for other ideas to come to the table, or other people need to be okay with it being your way.
Yep.
But I think whichever way it goes, you've then got to commit to the idea, and then you've got to execute it.
Yep.
And the only way you're going to go back and reflect is if, when you executed it,
It's
you've
a
tracked
finished
it.
product.
You've actually tracked what's going on, because you can't track what you don't measure. So you've got to measure what it is along the way. What were we looking for? Was this a video? Did we get a finished video? Was there footage missing? Did we not get a scene that we thought we got?
Yep.
And if so, did we have a shot list? Like all of these things, by taking notes along the way, after you're executing and while you're executing, that means you've actually got something to look back on to review for next time.
One thing that I liked that you mentioned at the start is the ability to kind of evaluate where you're at, to be able to commit to that project, whatever it is. And, it's something that I've been a lot more mindful of in this year, I would say, is if I'm at this stage where I feel like I'm like 80% there and I know that there's something missing, it's having that ability to be like, who can I get in here to get that other opinion so that I can get to that finish line?
Yep.
And we did it recently with with Josh's song. I was like, I know that I have like a pretty much a finished song, but I know that there's parts missing, and I'm not the person that I need to be able to get this, what I can see in my head.
Yep.
So we got Jeremy in, Jeremy from Beloved, and he's a session musician. He's just played with Jerome Farah recently.
Was it the
Like
year
he's
before
a
just
gun.
rehearsing?
Yeah, he was just in here rehearsing. And I knew his ability as a keyboard player, and I knew that he would be able to commit. He would be able to do what I was able to tell him. I need this keyboard part. I want it to sound like this. I need strings. That's a blind spot for me, that I would never have been able to execute the way that he did. And therefore I was like, get him in and we'll get this song to a point where it's
a better
finished.
end result.
And it's not something that bands do. It's just not. Like you feel like for whatever reason that it has to be within the band. I'm going to get this song finished. I wrote it. I'm singing it. We're not getting... it's just in the real world, in the professional world, in the, whatever you want to call it, there's always, that's why you see like 6 or 7 different songwriters.
Yep.
It's not a bad thing to get other people in for another opinion to help you get this song from a 50% cracking song to an 80% really, really good song, you know?
Absolutely. And that's one thing that, looking back on all the early bands I was in, it's like we just didn't know that. That was just a blind spot of not being exposed to the music industry, to how things are done, I guess behind that magic curtain of, oh man, when they're a professional, what do they do? When it's like, hey man, get a songwriter in. Even the first thing, if you ever start talking with majors, the first thing they do is they put you as the artist in the studio with some songwriters and producers that they know. Just to see what you got. Hey man, just bounce ideas off these guys, see how it goes, see what the flow is.
Yeah, there's this pride of being in a young band and being like, I have to do it all myself. Like, fuck that. Like someone else is not coming in and ruining my song for me. It's like, it's the wrong mindset. You are closing yourself off.
Yep. And I even look at our time in DYE. And again, this was through me not knowing, I guess, how things were done for others. In my mind, we had to produce, record, write everything ourselves. Every track that came out, we had to produce it. And that held us back because it meant we were trying to produce every song. When it's like these days you see rappers, which I think is the great way, like as I've said before, this is pretty much the Wild West of beats on the internet. You got beat catalogs You can pull anything. So it's like if you're a rapper and you've got something to say, if you've got a story to tell, just go and jack beats, pull them off online, like get beat catalogs from other producers, go get in the room with other people.
Yep.
You don't have to produce. If you're not a producer, why spend months and months and years getting to a product which won't be as good as someone who's been producing for 10 years and it comes naturally?
And you'll get it within a week or something,
And then
instead of
you can
2
stay in your
years
lane.
or something like.
Yeah.
It's
if
so
we had
true.
done that, we would have put out so many more in fact, if someone was to tally up the amount of hours that we spent in the lab recording and producing and quantified that against output that the public saw, I think it would be disgracefully
like 5%
disproportionate.
or 4% or something like. And this is funny though, because what came to my mind then was touring. Bands tour all the time and they rely on other bands in other states to bring the crowds for them. What's the difference? To me, that's there's no difference there. You are relying on someone that you've never met or someone that you know kind of vaguely to do something for you that you can't do yourself in another state, getting a gig full of people so that you can get your music to new ears.
Yep.
What's the difference between that? There's some difference between like, it's my art, it's my creativity.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just closing yourself off. There's so many opportunities. And like you said, like if you had have brought in all these different people that had really good strengths, you can guarantee, one, you would have met way more people.
Way more.
You would have had better products. And people listening probably would have been like, fuck, this is some quality shit, And you have a better, what's it called? People have a better view of you. They kind of have this like, ooh, they're working with all these different people. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And if nothing else, we would have definitely had a more diverse back catalogue. But again, it's like that you don't know what you don't know. To us, that was what you had to do. It was only by going out and networking and talking with other musicians, and then you go through it, and eventually I think it goes either two ways. Either you come to this learning curve of, oh man, all right, my actions that haven't got me to where I want to be, my actions were wrong. This was indeed on me. I had to grow, I had to learn as myself, and I had to learn something else. I had to learn where were my blind spots. Or you keep hitting your head against a wall and wondering why your head hurts. You either keep doing the same action and eventually, either that or you're just going to be super, super jaded and hate the industry and think that all the music industry is a joke and hate everyone who makes it because you never made it. When there wasn't that self-reflection to go, hey, if I'm doing the same actions and I'm doing the same, my procedures haven't changed, how I write a song hasn't changed, how I release a song hasn't changed. If I've done that for 5 years and it hasn't changed different results, it's like, maybe I need to change.
On me.
It's on me.
Yeah, 100%. Nice. Well, on that, I guess we'll finish that up. But just to summarize, the main points that we wanted to make is in terms of opening yourself up to collaborate, remember that other people have value.
Absolutely.
There's this like thing, I think potentially because of the internet and Facebook and stuff like that, because it's so easy to see so many people in the world, but you're only really exposed to, a certain type of person just because of that, the way that the, what's it called? The thing,
the
algorithm shows you certain things.
Yep.
It's easy for you to go.
Everyone's in their own feedback loop.
Yeah. Or the alternative is like everyone else sucks. And everyone else is really like a shit person. You know what I mean? It's like, let's start to trust other people. Let's start to value other people. Let's start to really, try and give people the benefit of the doubt more often than not. Because when you approach things with that sort of mindset, you'll get so much back in return.
Absolutely. And if you do that sorry to jump in.
No,
if you do that for a whole heap of projects, it's like, yes, you might have one that didn't pan out the way and in your head you're like, man, when I collaborated with Stu and it just didn't, I would have got a better result on my own.
Yeah.
That's going to be a one-off. If you are open and you are trusting others and bring them into your creative works, one, either you'll start to wean out people that you shouldn't work with just because you've gone through it. And again, you've just validated your working out by actually doing it and not trying to predict how it's going to go. But also, if you do 10, 15 projects with 15 others, there's going to be some good ones in there. You're going to get a result that you wouldn't have got on your own.
Yeah. And the other funny thing there is like if you go into it with that mindset of like everyone sucks, no one can help me, I'm the best, you will attract the people that you are wanting to not attract because you will keep telling yourself that these people aren't any good.
And they're not going to go to it. Would you want to be in the room with someone who doesn't value your opinion?
Exactly.
Just wouldn't. And then I think another big point on the initial brainstorming part is being able to, one, get your idea down on paper, but then the only reason you do that is so that you can articulate a creative idea that's non-tangible to the other peoples in your band or your team.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge one, because when ideas get lost in translation, if I'm coming to you with an idea and I can't fully describe it to you, it's going to be really hard for you to give me all that you know and the best of your knowledge.
And you'll probably think that it's a trash idea.
Probably.
Potentially.
It's like similar way I tell artists, like hip-hop artists, to have a basic understanding about producing, not to be a producer, but when you're in the room with a producer, you need to be able to articulate things to them.
Yep.
Especially with sound, with music. This is a non-tangible thing. You can't see it. So in order for the producer and the engineer to get the most out of you, you need to be able to articulate these things to them. It's like, oh man, I'm
Need
hearing
a bit more reverb or whatever it might be.
If you can't articulate it,
Yep.
you're just going to run into communication blocks all the time.
Yep, totally. Nice one. Just to let you guys know as well, we didn't mention at the start, but yeah, we have started our artist coaching courses for this year as well.
Yep.
We did mention a few episodes ago, but we're still starting the interviews and stuff for people that want to reach out to us, ask some questions about what is included in that.
Yep.
Just to let you know, it's six sessions.
Yep.
Over the course of 12 weeks. Is that right?
That's right. 6 sessions fortnightly. And basically in that, so we cover off all that goes into being a full-time musician. You know, we've got a full syllabus that we've written up that covers everything from touring, producing, recording, songwriting, budgeting, all the things that go into being a full-time musician. And then we have our first initial interview where we sit down with you, see where you're at, and then we're going to focus more heavily on obviously what the next 6, 8, 12 months looks like. If you just come off touring, we're not going to spend a heap of time telling you how to tour and how to prep for a tour. You know, if you're about to get into the studio, let's make sure everything is as tight and structured as it can be so that you get the most out of that recording session you got coming up.
So if you're interested, please email us, contact@marshallstreetstudios.com.
Hit us up on Insta.
All the good stuff. So thank you.
No, thank you. And always, if you have liked what you heard in this episode, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to this channel wherever you've heard us, and share it with a friend. As you said, this is the best way we can get this information out, and that's what we're looking to do at the end of the day.
Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Cheers.